Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Question Box for Friday, the 24th of September, 2021. The Question Box is your weekly gaming talk show. I'm your host, Shane Bailey, and each week I'm joined by one good friend from the Australian and New Zealand games community to discuss, dissect, and maybe sometimes debate the latest stories from the industry that we love so much. This week, I'm joined by a very good friend. I'm very excited to have him on the show. He is the editor at Maxi-Geek. Please welcome Luke Henderson. Luke, how are you, mate?
I'm doing well. How are you, Shane?
I'm very well. It's a Friday. It's Halo, Infinite tech preview is available tomorrow. It's available now, but you can only play Training Grounds.
I'm on brand, as you can see.
I was about to say, yes, I appreciate the Halo love being shown on the screen. Thanks for joining us, mate. For those who don't know about all the fantastic work you do over at Maxi-Geek, why don't you tell us all about it?
Yeah, so Maxi-Geek is my own little slice of the internet where I talk about gaming and tech and movies and everything that is cool that I like. And we cover reviews for everything. We do news wrap ups like for the Direct today. We covered everything there, and it's basically just a massive passion project of mine because I love video games. I love talking about games, and it's my little way of doing so. So yeah.
Nice, mate. Yeah, I'll definitely need to encourage everyone to go on over to Maxi-Geek and check it out. I'll throw the URL in chat a few times. There we go. And be sure to follow Luke on Twitter as well. His Twitter handle is right below his beautiful face there on screen. This is the Question Box every Friday, 8:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. We break down all the biggest news stories from the week in gaming. You can follow us, you can watch live like you're doing right now on Twitch. But if you've missed any of our past episodes, go and check them out on my YouTube channel. Just search Magic Casts on YouTube. The show is broken up into two halves. In the first half, we'll break down the top three of the biggest news stories from the weeks in games, and then in the latter half of the show, we dive into one big theme, topic, or trend. This week, it'll be all about Nintendo's Direct, which happened in the early hours. Well, not so early hours. They're quite reasonable hours of the morning. I think 8 a.m. it was, which is
8 a.m.
a delight compared to what Xbox and PlayStation tend to do. Sometimes 3 a.m., sometimes 6 a.m. in the morning. So
Nintendo are usually 2 in the morning. So this was an utter delight.
Yes, a welcome change
decent time.
to their Direct schedule. Anyway, Luke, let's dive straight into it. Are you ready for the top three, my friend?
Yes, I am. Let's go.
Let's do it. I was, like I said at the top of the show, before the show, I should say to you, Luke. I was a bit worried this week. We're a bit light on the news story side. We're getting into the period of the year where all the games are coming out, and maybe there aren't many news stories dropping. We're just talking about the games that we're playing. But the week certainly delivered in a couple of ways. And the first story comes from Respawn and a bit of a communication bungle of theirs about their beloved Titanfall series and whether we're going to see it ever come back or whether it's going to remain dormant because they're too busy making too much money on Apex and Star Wars games. But anyway, Tom Ivan over at Video Games Chronicle has this story. Respawn offers fans some hope for more Titanfall games. Respawn has offered fans a glimmer of hope regarding the possibility of new Titanfall games. The company tweeted on Wednesday to say the series, quote, is the very core of our DNA, unquote, likely in response to statements made by studio community coordinator Jason Garza during a recent live stream. During that live stream, Jason said, quote, don't get your hopes up, man. I've said this before, we don't have anything in the works. There's nothing there. We've got too many other games in the works right now. So rather emphatic in his saying that there is absolutely nothing to see here. Later on, Respawn tweeted on their official account to say, contrary to what some folks are reporting, Titanfall is the very core of our DNA. Who knows what the future holds? So immediately going against seemingly what their own employee stated in his live stream. Before we get into whether Titanfall might be coming back or not, Luke, what do you make of this communication bungle on Respawn's part and potentially Jason, just from a personal perspective as well? This is a bit of a weird one where studios come out and said, don't listen to this bloke who works for us.
Yeah, the old, the rare clarification on a rumor doesn't come around all that often. Look, I think it's just one of those, maybe somebody asked a very poignant question and he gave a very poignant answer, said, hey, we don't have anything right now. And maybe he just was a little too emphatic on the delivery of his answer, and people just ran with that because he's so confident in what he said. So they just took it that way. That's the only thing I can think it is, purely because it's really rare for a company or a spokesperson for the company to say, hey, no, we're not doing that thing. The thing that everyone wants, no, never again. I think it's just one of those delightful little missteps in how things were perceived.
Yeah, I completely agree, right? Like, even if there is no Titanfall in active development, you as a developer emphatically telling people no, and don't get your hopes up, and there is no chance of that thing that you love being made anytime soon. You don't say that. You just say, hey, no plans right now to be announced, which is certainly true, but also just gives them enough to, I suppose, grasp onto as a diehard fan. Right? It's like, okay, so nothing right now. Okay, cool. So maybe sometime in the future we'll see. So I think just a misstep on his part. But I thought great that Respawn has come out. Though, do you think, like, based on the way they've communicated this, who knows what the futures hold? Is a tease at the fact that maybe there's something coming, or do you think again it's just trying to get those hardcore fans back and have the carrot dangled in front of their face once again?
I think it's more that, like, Respawn's not a small company anymore. They've got a number of teams, and I think their teams are already active on other things, and rather than say no or maybe, they're like, hey, look, nothing now, but you never know. I think it's just more like, we're not saying no, we're saying not right now. And I think they're just trying to entice people to stay with them for a bit longer if they're just only there for Titanfall. I think that's all they're trying to do. But, it's one of those things where they've come across pretty firm with their answer straight after this sort of story broke.
Yeah.
And I think they overcorrected just a little too much, and now people may be reading into it. Oh, hey, they've said not now, reading into it more than they should.
Yeah, I think I'm completely aligned with you on that one. I think they've just tried to reel it back, right? Just like, all this negativity, let's bring it back, give them probably more hope than we reasonably should at the moment, because, I don't think there is Titanfall in active development. Titanfall 2 shipped at the tail end of 2017, sandwiched in between Battlefield and Call of Duty that year. EA did that game no favors, releasing it in that late October window. It really was sent to die, despite having a fantastic campaign and a really popular multiplayer suite as well. It has its core fan base, but right now that multiplayer fan base is suffering through a lot, I believe, a lot of DDoS attacks, and not the most stable multiplayer experience for the moment, which is a shame. And we know that Respawn, a growing studio, but they are quite busy with obviously supporting Apex Legend, which has been a runaway success for EA. And the report that I think they have confirmed that there is going to be a new game in the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order series, so you assume they're heads down bums up on that, and that's probably coming tail end of next year. So whether there is any capacity for there to be another Titanfall game anytime soon, I'm not sure. Though having said that, EA's had a pattern recently of making announcements that please hardcore fans like Dead Space and Skate, so who knows what the future holds.
Well, the other thing too is that Respawn also shipped last year a Medal of Honor VR title.
Ah, right, yeah.
And that team is now sort of off that project and onto other things. So maybe it's more Medal of Honor, maybe it's something else, who knows. The only thing that I can say for certainty is that there'll be 100 different games in development at EA, and maybe 10 of them will ever see the light of day. Right. Purely because there's so many things that go into a game being made, and an idea now, 6 months from now, may be impacted by an event in the world, and it just doesn't make sense to release a game that may have some sort of correlation to an event, or the story just doesn't work in the long run. So, who knows what Respawn are doing? But the fact that they're still doing Apex, which is set in that universe, so we're still getting Titanfall lore, Titanfall content, essentially, just not with the giant mech suit. So,
which is the part that I want, right? I want the giant mech suits.
I will say though, if anyone's never played Titanfall 2, that goes on sale pretty regularly for like $10 on all the platforms. If you haven't played it, you're doing yourself a disservice by not playing it, and especially when it's that cheap. It's so good.
Like 10 Australian dollars. It's ridiculously cheap sometimes. And also available EA Play and Game Pass as well. So if you have that fantastic way to play that game. But speaking of Titanfall, like, you know, we've just rattled off some fantastic games from Respawn. Apex is huge. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order proving to EA itself that a single player, you know, strong, high quality action games like that can find success in today's market, and you know they've truly noticed, and it seems to have impacted or at least swayed a lot of the creative decisions for other games in their portfolio, right? Like Dragon Age 4, pardon me, not Inquisition, that was the last game. Won't have any, like, you know, microtransactions or anything like that. And Mass Effect seemingly going the same route as well. The question I want to ask, Luke, is do we want a new Titanfall from Respawn when they're proven to be such fantastic, versatile studio? They could go on to make a different Star Wars game in the same way that Insomniacs nailed it with Spider-Man, and now they're working on Wolverine. Could we see them really flex their muscles and do something even more exciting than Titanfall 3 is what I'm trying to ask, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to be locked into being the Titanfall studio. I think, you know, they've got enough talent there that they could make sort of any genre of game they want. Whether or not they're willing to relinquish the control of Titanfall development to another studio that EA owns, or they outsource it to, I couldn't see that happening. But I mean, at the same time, I don't think they're going to rush into it. I think they're going to, you know, all the creative people they've hired for Medal of Honor and Star Wars, I think they're going to let them stretch their muscles on things that interest them and that they want. And I don't see Titanfall 3 coming anytime soon, but I don't think they're going to give it up. I think Titanfall 3 will come eventually, but I just don't see it coming. Maybe, you know, by, I had to think what year we were in for a second there. Maybe by like 2024, we'll hear something about a new Titanfall, but I don't think we're going to hear anything anytime sooner.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like an ace up their sleeve, right? You know, when things get dire, it's just like smash glass in emergency. If the next Star Wars game isn't here, or somehow Apex loses half its play base and they need a win, then they'll pull that card out from their deck and play it. You know, not to say that it's guaranteed to be a success, but just given the high quality of Titanfall 2, it's hard to imagine that they wouldn't nail a threequel given everything that the studio has learnt. So, yeah, like, I wouldn't be opposed to another Titanfall game. I like the original is one of my favorite games from last generation. I had so much fun just in that multiplayer suite alone. I didn't play a lot of Titanfall 2 multiplayer. By that stage, Rainbow Six Siege had its hooks in me, and there was no way I was going to play anything else. But I really enjoyed the campaign. Masterful campaign, and just yeah, like a, you know, one of those first-person shooter, traditional linear shooter campaigns you don't really see anymore. It's kind of like Machine Games, 343, and yeah, Titanfall really carrying that banner. You know, Call of Duty sometimes doesn't get a single player campaign. The new Battlefield doesn't get that. So I would be keen for another, you know, high-octane shooter campaign, but just seeing what Respawn was able to achieve with something like Jedi Fallen Order, I can't help but wonder what else that studio would be capable of. And it's exactly, I brought up Insomniac earlier. It's the reason why I'm most excited for Wolverine, because they've proven their skill with, I mean, not only Spider-Man, but with a lot of their previous titles, right? Like Ratchet and Sunset and Resistance. But as someone who isn't quite taken with open world Spider-Man as most people, I played the original 2018 game for about 10 hours and kind of had my fill. I'm excited that studio is stretching its legs and trying something different. Like, I'm hoping Wolverine isn't just, you know, him in a city, clawing his way around an open world like Spider-Man in that same sort of format. But I'm just excited to see them take on a different type of experience. So I'd be keen.
I don't want to see Wolverine in spandex. So as long as they avoid that, it's a plus for me.
Well, yeah, we had the flannel shirt in the bar, right, in the CGI. So seemingly, fingers crossed, that doesn't happen.
True.
Anyway, but yeah, would you like? Do you think if Respawn were to sort of flex their creative muscles and try something completely new, is any thoughts on where you'd want to see them go?
Well, I mean, they've only done 5 titles, and 4 of them have been shooters. So they're sort of, and well, I mean, when you think about their pedigree, you know, they primarily came from Infinity Ward, who makers of Call of Duty, and they before that came from EA, where they were the makers of Medal of Honor. So as a studio, they've definitely got, you know, a favorite genre they like to keep going back to, or a favorite viewpoint, I should say. So there's definitely a lot of skill that they've got. I'd love to see them try something a little different. And by that, I don't just mean a third-person shooter. Like Star Wars was great because it kept that frenetic action that Respawn have they nailed with Titanfall 2 with the momentum.
Mm.
Fallen Order had that, but then they just opened it up with so many other things. A bit of platforming, some deeper combat systems, which again, that sort of comes from the God of War influence that Stig the director brought into it. So I think if given the chance to make something sort of completely original or slightly off kilt from what we may expect from them, I think they would do phenomenally well with it if given the time and the money. The best example I can ever give for a game studio that was given a chance to do something different but wasn't given the time or the money was EA's Tiburon studio, who, if anyone plays sports games, they make Madden every year. And lately they've been doing some golf games as well for EA. But a few years ago on Xbox 360, they made a Superman game that tied in with the movie. And it wasn't the best game ever. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't what people wanted. It wasn't the best video game for Superman.
Yeah.
Because they weren't given the time to make it. They sort of were rushed through the development. So, if you give a studio the right resources and the right backing, and they've got the right vision for their product, you can get some amazing stuff. So I think Respawn can definitely get up there with what they've got already. I just want EA to give them the chance.
Yeah, you make a great point. You reminded me of a very talented developer, also being paired with a very suitable IP, I'd say, in Platinum Games way back when, I think 2014, worked on a Legend of Korra action game, and you put those two, that studio with that IP together, and it's almost a match made in heaven. But when the studio is given less than 12 months to turn around, what was essentially a very shallow Xbox Live Arcade title way back then, it doesn't turn out great, right? You need the time, you need the resources, you need the vision. Yeah, you need that drive from within the studio to work on something that they want to work on, right? Which is why I think I'm excited by Wolverine, because we know that Insomniac was pitching that to Marvel with PlayStation as the next game that they wanted to work on, and Marvel have taken them up on that offer, which is really exciting. Maybe we see. I think at the end of the day, I want to see whatever Respawn wants to work on, but maybe it's a blending of the two. You mentioned like their first-person shooter heritage. What if they take Star Wars, an IP that they're more familiar with now after Jedi Fallen Order and its probably its imminent sequel, and work on a new game, like a reboot or sequel to Republic Commando, which was a very popular Star Wars game on the original Xbox. That would be amazing.
That has been rattling in my head for the past 2 months.
Oh, really? There you go.
Because of Star Wars: The Bad Batch, which is the animated show.
Yeah.
It's a squad of four characters,
yeah,
and Echo the girl. And I can't think of her name now. It's not Echo. Echo's one of the guys.
Yeah. I'll get it.
But there's 4 squad members.
Omega,
that's it.
Yeah.
But you've got Hunter, Wrecker, Tech, and Echo, and then you've got the sniper guy, whatever his name is. But there's four squad members in this thing. They go off doing missions, and my first thought was this would be the perfect way to do another Republic Commando game.
Yeah.
You've got your leader of your squad, you've got your heavy, you've got your tech support, and you've got your your all rounder. If Respawn want to pick up the squad based shooter, I'm all on board for that. And the theme to the Bad Batch, I could definitely get behind that.
Yeah, I love doing those mental exercises in my head, just matching popular IP now with the most suitable developer. The one that I did not come up with myself, but I've seen echoed about is the Coalition working on a Mandalorian game. I think that would be absolutely amazing. I would love to see that. Anyway, so I guess we'll see whatever Respawn's going to work on. They're a very talented studio, I'm sure. Whatever they work on next will be a bona fide hit. Just like Kenna Bridge of Spirit, speaking of talented developers, this is the first game from Ember Lab, a studio that has a long history within the film animation space, working on their very first game. And it's dropped on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 and PC. You can pick it up on the Epic Game Store right now. And rave reviews. I'm just going to head over to the critical consensus over on gamesindustry.biz, where Jeffrey Russo compiles just a bit on the game. He says, Tuesday saw Ember Lab's first studio release with Kenna Bridge of Spirits for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and PC. Kenna is an action-adventure title that sees the titular heroine on a quest to help spirits move on to the afterlife and aid a land harmed by evil. The critical response has been positive, as the game currently has a Metacritic average of 83, or generally favourable reviews. I'm not going to run through what all the different reviewers across different media outlets thought of this game, but it's landed very well for a studio's debut effort. Luke, have you had a chance to play Kenna yet? I was... When they first revealed this way back last year, I was very excited.
Yeah, I had to argue with one of my guys. They wanted to review it, so unfortunately I didn't get the code. That went off to somebody else. But the moment I saw it, I fell in love with that art style. I'm just like, I don't care what the game is. It looks beautiful enough that I'm okay with playing it. But yeah, having seen it in action, I'm now a little annoyed that I'm not reviewing it. So. It just looks so good.
Yeah. And the topic that I wanted to, or the question I want to raise just around this release is it's a shorter game. It's budget price. It's not full priced. I think it's $40, which right now equates to 60, I want to say, on the Epic Games Store.
60.
And I believe it's the same price on PS4 and PS5. I thought I'd have to double check that. For the longest time, particularly last generation, we sort of saw AA games fall away, right? You know, what we're used to seeing from publishers like THQ back in the 360 era, that they kind of disappeared. And for the longest time, we just had AAA games on one end and indie games on the other end, $60 or $20 or below most of the time. So I wanted to have a discussion around AA games and whether games like Kenna signal them potentially coming back. There were a couple last generation, though, you know, some that jumped to mind first didn't quite land. I'm thinking of something like Recore on the Xbox side, which was a budget title that just didn't quite deliver on what I think most people would have wanted from a game like that. But here we have Ember Lab, their debut title, rave reviews, and people, just calling it a fantastic modern PS2 game, right? Like a lot of those sensibilities, those simpler gameplay design and mechanics being brought forward to 2021 and delivering experience at a budget price. Not outstaying its welcome as well, right? Like I think that's what I like about these AA games, that you can sort of pick them up, really enjoy them for usually a shorter period of time than most AAA games, and be done with them, and be thankful that they existed. So Luke, you've been covering games for a long time. Do you think that potentially we could see the return of AA games as sort of a I don't know, it's like a key part of the gaming space, and has it happened already? I suppose could be another question.
It's definitely happened already. Psychonauts 2 is very much that same style. It's very old school in its game design, but it's also, obviously it's a bit of a longer game, but it's still very much that whole, it's not a AAA, there's not millions of people working on it, But, in your show notes, you put THQ there. And THQ, they just had a showcase event where they announced a whole bunch of titles. But THQ have a subsidiary called Handy Games. And Handy Games just had a showcase yesterday morning,
right?
Where they announced like 8 titles, and then Handy Games are known for sort of that, just not maybe they're indie developers, but they get sort of the big publisher support, kind of like the EA originals, but not EA sort of level of money. So I think we're starting to see a lot of that come around now. These sort of smaller teams making games, there may be 5-10 hours worth of content. And it's because these are the games people want to see again, so they're making them themselves. And you mentioned that we didn't really get a lot last generation because something like THQ went away, and unfortunately THQ, when they collapsed, they were sort of the king. They owned that sort of middle ground with a lot of their licensed titles, and a lot of the licensed titles became that sort of cheaper alternative for games. And now we're starting to see a lot more licensed games coming back. So I think the sort of the mid-range game is getting a resurgence purely because they've picked up again, and people that are making games now maybe were part of massive studios that folded 5 years ago, and that we're now starting to see the fruits of their labours coming to the market. So.
Yeah, you touch on some great points there. Firstly, you mentioned Psychonauts 2. I think that's a great example because I think for a lot of these games that would have been labelled as AA, back in the day, those developers who wanted to work on something that wasn't quite indie but wasn't quite AAA, found a home on Kickstarter, right? Where fans of long dormant franchises that they wanted to see come back were brought to life there through crowdfunding. You also mentioned THQ, and they had just a showcase recently. They announced or revealed, pardon me, Outcast 2, MX vs ATV Legends, which is just an IP I haven't heard about in so long that it really excites me because I enjoyed that with my brother back in the day. Superpower 3 and Jagged Alliance 3. We also have SpongeBob SquarePants, the comic shake. So again, those licensed games you spoke of. Destroy All Humans 2 Reprobed as well, a remake of the 2006 game dropping also. And I also wonder, are there developers in the space, working on games that you could describe as indie, but they're just, at a scope that's just greater than most indie titles now. Like, I feel like the range at which something can be described as indie is so much broader than what it used to be, whereas Hades is such a high quality indie game, right? And I believe it's sold at like $30 US, right? Which is pushing about 40 here locally. That maybe there is just a greater range, right? It's not black and white anymore. There is that gray area where any game, no matter what size, can live. It also makes me ask the question: is it kind of I don't know, not ridiculous, but just irrelevant to even try and label games as AA anymore? I think for marketing purposes and for the purpose of just trying to manage my own or the community's own expectations, we like to label games certain things, right? Just to sort of get an understanding of what we're in for. But I'm keen. Honestly, I'm glad that the space seems to have life again. Oh, that's another studio I was thinking about. You mentioned EA Originals. Studios like Hazelight, right? Hazelight, developing things like It Takes Two and A Way Out, which I think without a big publisher, you'd probably see them living on or being funded on Kickstarter or being published by an indie publisher, right? Whether it be Raw Fury or Annapurna or any number of them now. There are so Fellow Traveler. There are so many operating that space. I'm just really excited by that, and the fact that it can also fill out the calendar year, right? Like these big AAA games, they're releasing more frequently than they ever have. Usually, it was just the February, March window and also the holiday window, but now we have things dropping all the time. And I like that. It's I don't know, we're just getting more variety from our experiences.
Yeah. I mean, you brought up an interesting point about the AAA title, the indie title. We had this sort of conversation on the Bookcast a couple of weeks ago. We talked about what really defines an indie studio now. Is an indie just the one guy in his garage making games on the weekend? There's a game coming to Xbox called Tunic. One guy, whole thing.
Yep.
Looks amazing, plays really well. It's very much a love letter to old school sort of Zelda games. And then you get a studio like Zoink, who just put out Lost in Random. We still technically classified them as an indie studio because of the games they've made over the years. But they're part of the Thunderfall group, and Thunderfall own Rising Star Games, and Rising Star Games are a publisher of many other indie titles. So because they're owned by the same publishing arm, it's like, are they now an indie studio because they have a big umbrella of sort of support around them? Are they still indie? Well, so I think that whole concept of what makes an indie studio, what makes a AAA game or a AA game or a quadruple A game, as we'll get to in a minute, I don't think they really mean much. I think it's just the same way that you talk about like a horror movie, and if you say, oh, we're going to watch a horror movie, someone will go, okay, cool, but someone will go, oh, is it psychological horror, or is it like a bloody horror? Is it a scary, somebody wants that nuance to sort of try and get their head around what they're going to see. And I think for a lot of gamers, they're still doing that to try and say, oh, it's a AAA game. Okay, so I know I'm going to get 20 hours of content from it minimum, maybe 5 hours campaign, 15 multiplayer. They're going to start stacking up expectations based on that label. And I mean, you mentioned, Psychonauts going to Kickstarter. As a developer, they're making the game they want. But the moment Microsoft attached their name to it, when they bought out the studio, some people started thinking, okay, what's going to become a AAA game now because Microsoft are publishing it. It's like, it didn't change. The plan was always the same. They kept to it. But they were given a little bit more time to polish things up because they got a little bit more money. But they didn't change anything behind the scenes, so to speak. So I think, yeah, the whole mid-range game, I think is making a comeback, but that's purely because we're seeing people want to make those games.
Mm.
Um, and I think it's more so a lot of it's driven by nostalgia, like Destroy All Humans 2,
Yeah.
the Reprobed. Um, if they said, hey, we're making a brand new Destroy All Humans, people would have been just as hyped. But, bringing back that classic game, that was made here in Australia originally, bringing that back, people are like, oh, this is something, I've got a memory of this. I've already played it. I don't really want to pay full price for a recreation of something I already played.
Mm.
So I think that helps as well with that whole, when we see remasters or things like that, we're seeing them sometimes at a cheaper price point because it is not a fully original title.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the discussion on what constitutes indie game anymore. It's something that I've been trying to think of as well. And the original sort of position that I landed on was, I think it's all about scope, right? Like it's which inherently is more often than not tied to just the capability of an indie team, which is typically smaller than most AAA developers. Sometimes one person, like you described. But then I think about No Man's Sky and the fact that comes from a very small independent team in Hello Games, but its scope is gigantic. Like it's an entire astronomical. Exactly, it's an entire universe. So then I thought maybe it's just about complexity. Is it complexity of mechanics or design? But there are some great developers out there doing amazing things. I think of something like, oh my god, it's fallen out of my head completely. The farm game, the really good one that everyone loves. Really,
Story of Seasons.
No, it's very similar to Harvest Moon.
Stardew Valley.
Stardew Valley. Thank you very much. One guy as well, right? I think originally.
Yeah.
And the complexity and the layers in that game are just through the roof. So, yeah. Look, I don't. I think it's almost sort of speaking of Greek mythology, like a Sisyphean task. The guy who pushes the boulder up a hill, trying to actually nut down exactly what the definition of indie is. Anyway, a conversation we could have probably forever if we wanted to. Anyway, one studio that certainly isn't independent is The Initiative. This is the Xbox Game Studios developer situated in Santa Monica. It was opened in 2018, led by Daryl Gallagher, an industry veteran who has held many high-profile positions within teams that worked on Call of Duty, and notably Crystal Dynamics, who led the reboot on Tomb Raider. He was a key part of that team who led the 2013 revival and later the 2015 sequel, Rise of the Tomb Raider. So he's led The Initiative. They announced Perfect Dark is the game that they're working on at the Game Awards, I think last year.
Yeah.
No, year before? Oh my god. Last year. All the years are blending together. I think it was last year. It was last year. And just today, this is, it was advertised as a quadruple A studio under Xbox's banner to try and develop the next big hit for Xbox to sit alongside Halo, Gears of War, Minecraft, Forza, Fable, and the like. We now know they're working on Perfect Dark. But an update today on their Twitter has told us that Crystal Dynamics, Daryl Gallagher's former studio, is assisting development on this game. And I'm a bit confused and befuddled on this one, Luke. I'm keen to hear your take. A AAA studio owned by Square Enix is supporting on an exclusive Xbox game that we can only assume is coming at 2023, maybe 2024 at the earliest. Crystal Dynamics, I'm sure we're about to get into it, not a support studio, right? They just shipped Avengers, Rise of the Tomb Raider before that in 2015, and 2013's Tomb Raider. So what do you make of them coming on board to assist and collaborate with The Initiative on Perfect Dark?
I mean, from the news that they're helping development, I'm excited because Perfect Dark was a great story, as well as mechanics. It had sort of everything going for it back then. The original, not the Xbox 360 version. And they really wanted to make Joanna Dark a big character. And if the initiative needed a support studio to help them make this game, I think Crystal Dynamics is probably the best one they could have gone with because they've just had a 1-2 punch of smash hits with the 2 Tomb Raider games they did where they had a strong female lead character.
Yeah.
So in terms of hey, who's a studio that can help us make a female-driven video game? Well, Crystal Dynamics would be the one I'd choose as well. The downside is this isn't Xbox saying to one of their other studios, hey, we need help with some assets or testing, which happens all the time. There was a story a few months ago about a PlayStation studio that kept getting pulled off their own projects to help with development on The Last of Us Part 2. So that sort of stuff happens all the time, and Ubisoft are known for it.
Oh yeah, there's a dozen studios working on each game.
Yeah. So this isn't just one of those, hey, let's tap one of our dozen studios we already own. This is them actively reaching out to another company, saying, hey, we need help with this. Essentially because this studio was, and when it was announced, they said it was a quadruple A. They called it a quadruple A, and that was the big.
That was in the job listing for one of the positions. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, if this is supposed to be the best studio that Microsoft can build, that they put all this money behind, and they've had to go and get help from another company, you kind of wonder where they're at with their game. That they've said, and it's not that they've done it secretly. They've done it publicly.
That's the thing. Hey, they've actively communicated on this, which is Anyway, sorry.
No, well, that's the thing. It's like the last time I recall seeing that was when Nintendo pulled Metroid Prime 4 from Bandai Namco and said, "Hey, we're giving it back to Retro. We're restarting development on it." That's obviously a different scenario, but it's like it's very, very rare to see a company announce these sort of businessy decisions. So the fact that Xbox have done this, that they've said, "Hey, no, let's publicly admit we're getting help from another studio," that's a little weird.
Do you think it's the case here that they see this as a very positive announcement? Like it's two, very talented studios coming together to work on our next big game, Perfect Dark. Look forward to it. Because I sort of question whether they're they've got their finger on the pulse correctly, right? Because to your point, studios, third-party independent, lending support on first-party productions isn't a new thing. You describe Ubisoft as well, like they have dozens of studios working on all their different titles, contributing in a variety of different ways. Xbox has done it quite a lot as well, although you just don't usually hear about it, right? Like Saber Interactive assisted 343 Industries on a bunch of stuff with the Master Chief Collection, and formerly they led production on the Combat Evolved Anniversary way back in 2011, so they had that relationship. We also had Certain Affinity lend help, I think, with Halo 5 Forge way back when, and Certain Affinity started out of former multiplayer designers from Bungie, so they have that pedigree working with Halo multiplayer. They know their stuff. But that stuff typically isn't actively communicated on, not until like the very end of development when the game's about to come out, and maybe they're doing some behind the scenes stuff and saying, hey, we brought on these experts to help us in this regard. So that's not new, but the fact that, to your point, a brand new studio that's being heralded as Xbox's next big talented team. They're in Santa Monica, hotbed of game development talent down there with Sony Santa Monica, Naughty Dog and Insomniac not too far by. I think Activision has a couple of studios as well, like LA, just a huge pool of talent in that area, right? The fact that we're less than 12 months removed from the announcement, all we've seen is CG, and it just feels as though Crystal Dynamics is on board to save this project because we haven't seen anything, right? Like we don't know what state this game is in. It could be sunshine and roses over the initiative. It's going really well. They're just still trying to staff up, and in order to ship this game in a timely manner, they need help from a very talented team. So they're going to get the best, and that's why Xbox felt the need to announce this. So yeah, I'm kind of 50-50. I just don't know which way to lean. I think the proof is going to be in the pudding, as always. But for the moment, I'd really question why they communicated this.
Well, the other sort of, I mean, obviously Daryl Gallagher being former Crystal Dynamics has probably helped, justify going to that studio.
Absolutely,
But you have to remember, Xbox have a good relationship with Crystal Dynamics anyway, because they had the exclusive rights for Tomb Raider for 12 months for Rise of the Tomb Raider. So But there's also another studio we keep forgetting about all this, and that's Rare. Rare
Right,
aren't
yeah.
active in the development, but they are, they're there to be tapped on the shoulder for support and knowledge. So, um, if they needed another studio, why couldn't they go to Rare?
Or they're too busy twiddling their thumbs over there with Everwild. Look, they don't know what they're doing with that game, so
It's going to be forever in the wild of development, I reckon that one.
yeah. Very nice.
Sorry, that was a bad one.
That's all right. I just want to get to the official tweet so I can bring it up on screen here. Everyone can see. So the initiative tweeted out 10 a.m. this morning. Perfect Dark update. We are partnering with Crystal Dynamics, the world-class team behind character-driven games such as Tomb Raider. No mention of Avengers here. To bring this first-person spy thriller to a new generation. So there's the official tweet. I think Daryl Gallagher, or in a subsequent tweet below, noted that the game is still in early development. I posit that the holiday of 2023 is probably the earliest we get this game, more likely leaning towards 2024 for this one. Look, I'm still excited for the game. Like, I think the Perfect Dark franchise is just brimming with potential in my eyes, and I'm really excited to see what their vision brought to life in this instance. And that's the other point as well, like how much creative freedom and what kind of contribution will Crystal Dynamics have in assisting the initiative here. In the communications, they've described it more as a collaboration. So they're not here just to help create assets and buildings and cars and vehicles and foliage for whatever the initiative has decided this game is going to be. I think they're really going to have a hand in shaping exactly how this game turns out. Tabs down under and says, hello, I've waited for you, Everwild. Yeah, probably waiting a bit longer on this one. We've heard that one's in development trouble, and 2025 is the targeted release window. So fingers crossed we get it sooner. But thoughts on, you mentioned actually, Luke, Rare in this. My feeling is Rare has absolutely no say in what happens here. They probably shared a bunch of documentation on the original design ethos for Perfect Dark, and I say that as well because at least the accent for Joanna Dark that we heard in the CGI trailer, which is playing on screen right now, that was revealed at the Game Awards last year, wasn't British. It was an American accent coming from Perfect Dark. So I think that signals that maybe it's completely separate from how we know the Perfect Dark that we know, that was obviously developed by Rare.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 points for that. One is that because it's so early in development, that trailer could have just been thrown together over a couple of weeks, and they just tapped somebody in the studio on the shoulder and said, "Hey, can you come record 2 lines of dialogue? We need some text."
Can you do a British accent? No. Okay, then just do your American accent.
Yeah, Pixar do that all the time. They get the folks in from their studio to record the temp audio, and the one that stands out is Ratatouille. Emile the rat is one of the animators, and Linguini, the human that Remy bonds with, is also another animator at the studio.
Right.
Because the temp audio, the directors just got so used to hearing it, they just went, well, we can't recast them now. We can't find other actors because it's not going to be those characters. So it's entirely possible that they've just tapped somebody internally and said, hey, we need some dialogue, run with it. But I think also to Rare, when I said before, I suspect they got a hand in it. Again, I think it's more just, hey, Rare have this font of knowledge about this character, about this world. We can tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, what's this? Do you have anything about this type of technology or weaponry or whatever? I think it's more just that. I don't think Rare are going to get their hands involved in any way, shape, or form, except maybe some product testing, maybe down the line. And a lot of the key people that made Perfect Dark have moved on to other studios now as well. So there is also that to consider. So yeah, I think Rare's just going to be there, maybe for moral support more than anything. But yeah, I think they got a little too eager on putting that trailer out. If they had left it for 6 months, maybe do it at E3, just gone, that would have been a little bit different. But I think they rushed it, and now they're trying to, as you said before, get some extra help in from a team that can just basically hit the ground running and start building stuff and get it out the door without spending, years in development, like a certain game that was shown off again today.
You touched on the fact that obviously it was announced pretty early. I think a lot of what drove that, at least initially, is that we'd heard so many rumors that it was going to be Perfect Dark from the initiative, right? And I think if they had spent any longer not announcing it, it's like, we know what's coming, just tell us. It's like Fable as well, right? Like, even when the acquisition of Playground was announced way back in 2018, we didn't get the announcement for Fable until 2020. And I think, there was rumors dating back to 2017 that Playground was working on that reboot to Fable as well. So, I think, let's just confirm it with a CGI trailer, and then we can come back once it's ready to actually show proper. So, look, here's hoping that we see the Perfect Dark gameplay sometime soon, and it's sounding really exciting. They'd mentioned first person. I was kind of hoping for third, but it's seeming like they're going for a gameplay experience really focused on inertia and movement, so maybe kind of like a take on like Spy Mirror's Edge type experience. I'm just really excited to see how it turns out. So before we wrap up this story, though, I just want to jump over to LinkedIn and see how many people, at least according to their list of employees here, are working at the initiative. Now, don't take this as a hard factual number. There's probably people who don't have LinkedIn that worked at the initiative, and maybe some people that have left the initiative and just haven't updated their LinkedIn profile. So this is by no means 100% accurate. But as of right now, I go into their profile and 69 employees. Nice. For the initiative. So not a massive team, right? Still growing, and clearly they have ambitions to hire more. I'd have to look at how many job listings are available for them, but still.
I just realized COVID. That's obviously going to
also
be a big roadblock in spinning up a new team, in a new location and meeting people. So maybe that's another reason that they needed help. They couldn't get the people they needed because of the situation in the world.
Yeah, 100%.
Literally just thought of it then.
There's one thing that's been looming over us for the last 18 months. Oh yeah, that's right, that pandemic that's keeping us all inside.
Oh, technically
that's
sword is above me.
Yeah.
I've ignored that this whole time. Yeah.
Anyway, those were three of the biggest news stories from the week in games this week. We're going to wrap up the top three and move on over to question time, where we bring in one big theme, topic, or trend from the games industry to discuss this. We're speaking of Perfect Dark, Nintendo held a direct this morning, 8 a.m. A great time for us here on the East Coast of Australia. It was 40 minutes long. They had a bunch of announcements and a couple of surprises as well that we're going to rattle on through. For those in chat, keen to hear what you thought of the direct. We're going to go through each of the announcements and just touch on some of the major points. And Luke, keen to get your thoughts on this one. Just for a bit of context, I had a Nintendo Switch. I sold it at the start of COVID because it was mainly my travel companion, and I just didn't have enough time to really enjoy it alongside the gaming that I usually do on Xbox and PC. Tabs, thanks for the feedback. Glad you enjoyed that. But Luke, tell me about Nintendo fan. Where do you land? Your thoughts on the Switch, the fact that there's an OLED model coming, general feeling around Nintendo right now.
I mean, I grew up Nintendo, so when you get to be my age, you grow up either Sega or Nintendo.
Yeah.
If anyone says they grew up PlayStation, you're too young. Go away. You bother me now. But generally speaking, Nintendo, I go through these lulls with them because they go so quiet for so long. Obviously, pandemic's been a contributing factor lately, but Nintendo being quiet isn't. You can't blame the pandemic on that because they do it all the time. They'll go 3-4 months without any sort of big news. We'll occasionally get a tweet from them here or there. So, but I mean, as a Nintendo fan, I'm enjoying the Switch. I think it is fantastic for what it does. And obviously, in the before times when I was traveling quite a lot, my Switch got a lot more use than it does now. Because I'm stuck at home most days, I will generally grab the Xbox to play or the PC. So, excuse me. I love the Switch, and I think Nintendo have been doing pretty well with them so far with it.
Nice. Yeah,
As for the OLED, I have mine ordered. I had it ordered day one. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. There you go. Love it that much.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had more time in the day, there are a bunch of experience on the Switch that I would really like to be enjoying, but my backlog is already giant, and it's all because of Hades. That game just is dominating my playtime at the moment, so I blame Supergiant.
That is on Switch, so
this is true.
You could feed the addiction
Yeah.
there.
Anyway, like I said, we're going to go through the direct and rattle off the different announcements. So join us in chat. Give us your thoughts on on all of them as we go through them. I'll start from the very top with the trailer that you just saw on the screen, and that is Capcom's monster action RPG Monster Hunter Rise is getting some new content in the form of the Sunbreak DLC, slated to launch in the Australian winter of 2022. I will say that I've Australianized all the seasons for this entire story as well, so don't worry there. The Switch exclusive iteration launched in March this year, and live to date has sold more than 7 million copies, following in the footsteps of the 2018 multi-platform hit for the series, Monster Hunter World, which has shipped more than 17 million units globally. Monster Hunter fan Luke, I myself have never tried the series, but I'm, in the minority, it seems. A hugely popular game. I think Capcom has really done well with this franchise of late.
It's hugely popular now. It was World that really brought people in. But yeah, I've been playing Monster Hunter since I got into it on the Wii, when the Monster Hunter 3 came out on the Wii many moons ago. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I reviewed Rise for Maxi-Geek, and I gave it a 10 out of 10. I gave it a perfect score.
Nice.
Because in the week and a half that I had it prior to release, I put in 47 hours.
Whoa.
I just could not stop playing that game. It was just the hunt loop was just so satisfying. And unlike older Monster Hunter games where you feel like you're a tank walking through a bog of molasses. You were so fast and fluid in Rise. So, yeah, I'm stoked to see that, it's not just a costume update that, Capcom have been doing now. It's actually a proper chunky release of content that's coming. So, yeah, I'm pretty hyped for this. Obviously, we don't know a lot because the trailer was very light on details.
What do you mean? It's a dragon in the darkness of night, Luke. What more do you want?
Well, we don't have to wait long because they are doing a presentation at TGS where they're going to give more details, and that's next week.
And you also noted as well that Rise will come to PC at the same time that this DLC launches. Was that right? Did I get that right?
Yeah. So Monster Hunter Rise was always going to come to PC. I say always. They announced it like 2 weeks after the Switch version was announced. And it basically had a year of exclusivity on Switch. But Capcom's announced today that when the Sunbreak DLC does launch, it will launch on PC with Rise the same day there. So
nice. When
Switch owners get the expansion, PC owners get everything.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, good to know. I might be able to check it out when it comes to PC. Moving on now, they showed a bunch of trailers for games coming in October. And October for the Switch looking very packed. I'm just going to rattle through these next 4 announcements you would have just seen on screen. Mario Party Superstars, a revamped collection of classic Mario Party boards, is coming October 29. Voice of Cards, The Isle Dragon Roars, which is currently on screen, is a new turn-based RPG from Square Enix and is coming the day before, October 28. Disco Elysium, The Final Cut, an updated addition to the 2019 modern classic RPG, will be available digitally October 12 and physically early next year. And Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity is getting some new content as part of its expansion pass. Wave 2, Guardian of Remembrance, also coming October 29. Of those 4, which jump out at you, Luke, as the ones you're most excited for?
Honestly, Mario Party and Voice of Cards. I'll be honest, Hyrule Warriors is a no for me because it's a Muso game, and I did 3 Muso games in a row for review, and it just really hammered home.
You're done for your lifetime?
Yeah, it just hammered home how similar they are. Right. Like story-wise, themes, visuals, they're all different, but the core gameplay is the same. So that sort of broke me on the Musos. I do own the game. I have it on the Switch cartridge and everything. It's in my shelf, but I've never actually played it. I bought it because I couldn't help myself. And Disco Elysium, we reviewed that on the site back in March. Already when it wasn't allowed to be sold in Australia, we reviewed it.
Oh, nice!
Kind of an odd scenario. But yeah, so the 2 Mario Party, just because Mario Party is Mario Party, it's just good fun. And Voice of Cards, it's actually from the folks behind the Nier series.
Oh, right, okay.
So the music's the same composer for there. I can't think of his name. I should have brought it up on screen. But the guy that wears the moon on his head in all the presentations, he was the director for Nier, Replicant originally and all that. This is their sort of next project. And they did announce it a few weeks ago. Or sorry, they teased it. They said, "Oh, we've got a new game coming," and there was no details. There was nothing about what this game was. So when this popped up, everyone's like, "This is weird. What's this game?" And then the names appeared, and everyone was like, "Hang on, this is that game from these guys they said a few weeks ago." So, yeah, it was just one of those sort of weird weird ones were sort of it's got a lot of potential behind it. But for me, the reason I'm interested in it is because of the people making it.
Yeah.
The actual gameplay, I don't do card games.
Right.
Like if I'm going to play a card game, I'll just get a deck of cards and play it that way. Like,
Yeah.
it's the same reason I don't play FIFA. If I want to kick a soccer ball, I'll go outside and kick a soccer ball.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, but it still looks really cool. Like the whole concept of being like everything is made of cards, like the world, the shops, the people, everything. I think that could make it something different. But yeah, again, it's just because it's also the near folk, and they've made some pretty amazing games over the past couple of years. So.
Yeah, I'm certainly intrigued by the voice of cards. Like, I'm not a tabletop RPG person, never have played anything like that. So the mechanics would be completely new to me. And the last time I really dived into a brand new genre, I fell in love, and that was a turn-based tactics game. I played Skulls of the Shogun, which was an Xbox Live Arcade game, a very humorous, cartoony take on that sort of subgenre. And that got me onto Massive Chalice by Double Fine. I haven't dabbled in XCOM yet, which I probably should. Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle, a great take on the turn-based tactics genre as well. So, yeah, maybe it's my time to dabble in a new genre. We're going to have to wait and see. Speaking of genres that are very popular, on the screen you're seeing a brand new kart racing game. The story goes, not content to let Nintendo dominate the kart racing genre, Square Enix announced Chocobo GP exclusively for Nintendo Switch, and it's coming in 2022. It'll feature local and online multiplayer, plus a 64-player tournament mode pitting 8 teams of 8 against one another. I did that right, 8, 8, 64, yep. For context on how much Switch owners love their kart racing, Mario Kart 8, which originally launched on Wii U and then later ported to Switch, has sold more than 37 million copies as of this past June. I remember when Nintendo's latest financial reports dropped, Luke, and they noted that 37 million number for Mario Kart 8. I popped out a tweet saying, why aren't more developers making kart racing games? It is by one of the most popular genres that's been completely dominated by Mario Kart, and these games would be so incredibly cheap to develop as well compared to a lot of AAA games nowadays. So Square Enix jumping in on the fray, taking inspiration, I suppose, from Sega, who have had Sonic All-Stars Racing, I think it was called, and then you also had Acti do Crash Team Racing as well. Does this one excite you at all?
No, but that's because I don't care about Final Fantasy.
Right, okay, fair enough.
It's one of those things that, obviously, like kart racing wise, I suspect this is going to be a proper, like the mechanics will be very sound, it'll be fun to play, but the theme of it all doesn't appeal to me. It's the same thing. Crash Team Racing, the mechanics in that game were amazing. The boost mechanics, if you got it right, you were so satisfying to boost.
Yeah. But
Crash Bandicoot as a character, as a whole sort of genre world thing, was never my thing. I didn't play on them growing up, so. Mechanics-wise, I'm looking forward to it. It is interesting because this isn't actually the first time we've seen this. This was announced as a 3DS game for a while before it was cancelled. And so they sort of brought it back to life again. They used a phoenix down, if you will, from Final Fantasy for a revive. So, yeah, I think it's pretty cool. And as you said, there's not a lot of people making kart racing games. Obviously, we've had a couple of Garfields and some Nickelodeon kart races. And, they're sort of middle ground in their appeal. But... yeah, I think this one could do really well. It just depends on how that online works, because they've touted that as a big thing, and if that doesn't deliver, people will be very upset. Yeah, definitely. Well, it's published by Square Enix. He's hoping it comes to other platforms as well, but for the moment, exclusively to Switch in 2022. Nintendo then pivoted to say that the last Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Fighter will be revealed in a final Mr. Sakurai Presents in less than 2 weeks. For us here on the Australian East Coast, the live stream will kick off at 1 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday, the 6th of October, so we don't have very long to wait. English Shane. Who do you want to see, Luke, and who do you expect to see to be the final fighter in Smash? I will correct you on one thing. It'll be Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Oh, thank you. Yes, on Daylight Savings then. Well done. I know it's sneaking. It's next weekend. It's coming up really soon. So that's they're going to go forward. So it'll be 12 a.m. I use the American thing. You spring forward. And then you fall back because they call autumn fall. Yeah, nice. Okay, that's how I remember it. Yeah, that is good. Yeah. As for fighters, I honestly don't care who the last fighter is, as long as it's not Waluigi. Okay, yeah.
Fair enough.
Because not because everyone wants Waluigi. It's like, no, I just don't think he's interesting enough as a character. I think he's essentially a one-dimensional copy of Wario.
Yeah.
Wario has grown over the years and become his own character. But even from the outset, he was the anti-Mario, right? So straight away, Mario's happy and cheerful. Wario was, cranky and mean. Whereas Luigi's big thing is he's scared. Waluigi isn't played that way. So as a fighter, I don't think he'll be that appealing.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had, do the old gun to the head, make a choice, I honestly couldn't pick. Like, nobody would have predicted that we'd get characters from Minecraft.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody would have guessed that. Banjo-Kazooie is one of those, hey, that'd be amazing to have it. Nobody ever thought that would happen, but people always wanted it.
Yep.
And out of nowhere, we got Sephiroth. Nobody thought we'd get him as a DLC character. We had Cloud from Final Fantasy VII and the 3 music tracks that he came with. Nobody thought we were going to get any more, but we did. I don't know. There's so many things in there that we could potentially see. The development is handled by Bandai Namco, or co-developed by Bandai Namco, I should say. So maybe we'll see somebody from Soul Calibur rock in, because we haven't had that yet.
True. Yeah.
Geralt of Rivia has appeared in a few other fighting games. Maybe he was in Monster Hunter World. He was in Soul Calibur.
Yeah, Soul Calibur.
So maybe it's his turn to pop up in Smash Brothers. He's got magic. He's got swords. He's got everything covered. So, but yeah, I mean, I couldn't actually pick somebody I want in the game. So.
I've seen a lot of people calling for Sora from Kingdom Hearts. I think it's Crash Bandicoot's 25th anniversary this year. That could be great timing as well. And speaking of anniversaries, Banjo-Kazooie, Xbox, Nintendo working together. 20 years of Halo this year. Luke, could the Master Chief make an appearance?
I mean, they're already partnered up with both Minecraft and Banjo. And Banjo again a bit later on in this conversation we'll talk about him, but and Xbox have done a lot with with the 2 Ori games and Cuphead all published on Switch by Microsoft, so they've definitely got the background. But if we're doing it that way, I'd love to see someone from Sony. Sony are pretty much the only company that haven't sort of popped in at this point. So I'd love to see something from Sony appear in the game.
Do you ever see Sony and Nintendo playing ball together, though? Like, they're just such strong rivals.
Yeah, I don't see them playing ball that way. I mean, I'd love to see it.
I can't think of any kind of collaboration from them in the last decade, honestly. Like, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, when was the last time they worked together in the same way that we've seen Xbox and Nintendo work together? I can't think of anything.
No, they never have. Basically, once the Sony or the Nintendo PlayStation fell apart, the relationship between Sony and Nintendo fell apart for good, and they've never recovered. But still, maybe this is the
Saw
we never thought we'd get.
Maybe.
We never thought we'd get anyone else from any other company, and we did. So maybe this is the time.
And if by some miracle it was a PlayStation character, which one would you put money on?
If I had to put money on a PlayStation character, I'd probably end up thinking Ratchet and Clank.
Okay, yep, makes sense. I was hoping you'd say Kratos with the Chains of Olympus and just blood everywhere.
It could, but I think Ratchet and Clank, because we've already got like Duck Hunt Dog and Ice Climbers and Banjo-Kazooie, so we've already got that sort of 2 character sort of setup, and I think they're a bit more family friendly than Kratos. So.
No, definitely. Anyway, so that live stream coming up, we're just going to have to wait and see what comes of the final character to join Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Very excited for the Smash fan base. Moving on now, we had a new Kirby game announced, which I think were just leaked very briefly. I think either yesterday or just before the show. So it's called Kirby: The Forgotten Land. It's coming in autumn of 2022. It is a 3D Kirby game, which we haven't seen either ever or in a very long time. I didn't do my homework on the Kirby franchise. The only Kirby game that I have played and actually quite enjoyed was Kirby's Epic Yarn on the Nintendo Wii. I really enjoyed that game. Luke, you excited for this one at all? What did this trailer do for you?
Yeah, I mean, it leaked about 12:30 in the morning, so about 7 and a bit hours before the showcase went live, and by Nintendo themselves. Again, the last Kirby game we got, Nintendo also leaked. Yep. So they're 2 for 2 on Kirby leaks. I'm excited for it. I like Kirby games because you don't have to, understand 17 different combinations of buttons to become a badass. You can just go in. They're calm, they're quiet, sort of peaceful games. You can just enjoy them. Which there's so many games these days that don't let you do that. You jump in, you just sort of go, 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 go. So Kirby is sort of a bit of a palate cleanser between meals for me. But this one, you know, I've seen a lot of people making jokes about it. It's basically the cartoon version of The Last of Us. You know, sort of,
Yeah, it was definitely a decrepit city, but also bright and whimsical.
Yeah, it's kind of an oxymoron thing. But yeah, I'm excited for it. And it is the first time we've had a full 3D Kirby. We've had a few sort of isometric-y sort of stuff.
Right,
here
like
and
2.5D
there,
sort of things. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is the first fully like Mario 64, you know, open world sort of, you know, platforming thing. And I'm very excited for it. And obviously all the copy abilities still come into play. So instead of now just being locked to 2D, you know, you can spin attack with a sword and you're not actually becoming a giant sword blade. You can do full circles and everything. So
yeah,
it looks really good and it could be fun.
Anyway, autumn next year, just quickly on the website, the blurb goes, take control of the powerful pink puffball Kirby and move around freely in 3D stages as you discover a mysterious world with abandoned structures from a past civilization. Like a shopping mall, ? Copy enemies' abilities like sword and ice and use them to attack and explore your surroundings. What journey awaits Kirby? Take a deep breath and get ready for an unforgettable adventure. So yeah, no, good to see Kirby getting the 3D treatment. I once heard that Kirby was... There's like a scale of platformers, there's of all the platformers that Nintendo holds in its sort of first party portfolio, they can all be placed on a scale of difficulty where Kirby is at the bottom, Yoshi games are typically a bit more difficult, Mario's the sweet spot, and then Donkey Kong is has the most difficult platforming games, which I think is probably really accurate as well. I'm not sure if that's purposefully done, like they kind of fit all these different needs and audiences as well. Like if you're, you know, a very young gamer who just can't finish the first level of Donkey Kong Country, then maybe a Kirby game is for you, or maybe something a bit more difficult like Yoshi as well. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. But anyway, yeah, really good for this
definitely
one.
True.
Moving down now, you would have just seen the teaser on screen. Animal Crossing New Horizons will get another update in November, and Nintendo will be presenting it during a live stream sometime in October. They will share more details soon. You know, speaking earlier about getting Nintendo games that sell in the tens of millions, Animal Crossing releasing at the very beginning of when COVID hit last year, getting new updates. I have yet to dabble in any Animal Crossing game, Luke, but I'm keen to hear what you think of the series.
Yeah, I mean, I started playing this on the GameCube. Is when I picked it up. It was obviously the first one that came out in the West. And I'll be honest, the whole reason I played the Animal Crossing back then so much is because there were, you know, a dozen plus NES games built in there. So, you know, you pick up all your weeds and you'd cash them in and get the money, and then you'd buy Donkey Kong. And you'd go back to your little house and you'd play the original Donkey Kong or the original Mario Brothers. On your TV in your little house you've made in Animal Crossing. So that's what kept me going back to that one. I fell off the wagon on Animal Crossing New Horizons after about 6 weeks, purely because there just wasn't anything to do. The updates didn't start as soon as they should have. And then even when they did start coming out, it was just, oh, here's more bugs to collect. Here's more fish in the sea. And they finally started, they put like swimming in the ocean, but it's only in a certain area. They finally started adding stuff like that, and then they've been really silent. They haven't had a big update on Animal Crossing in about 8 or 9 months. So they're definitely due for one. And this has a lot of people excited. I mean, there are talks of there being free DLC like normal, but also sort of like a paid mini expansion as well. We'll see what happens next month. But yeah, I'm keen to see what they're bringing, but at the same time, you know, if you're like me and you're not a big Animal Crossing fan, I don't expect this to like change your mind, I think.
Yeah. I'm excited for that community, right? Like when they're doing free updates, the idea of a paid expansion that's going to deliver something more significant is always exciting. So we'll have to wait and see how that turns out. Like I said, they're going to have a live stream in October to reveal what will be coming in November, which is very exciting. Speaking of updates, we've got a bunch of other updates coming for some other Nintendo titles, kicking it off with the second free update for Mario Golf Super Rush was revealed and released today. In it, Koopa Troopa and Ninja join join the roster as playable characters, and 2 additional courses have been added. Super Rush launched earlier this year in June and managed to sell more than 1.34 million units in its first week, making it the second best selling Mario Golf game to date, which was pretty amazing. I should note that we don't have hard numbers on Mario Golf 64, but that's sold around 1.5 million. So safe to say that since June, Super Rush has probably overtaken it as the best-selling Mario Golf game to date. I haven't played this one, and it came out to middling reviews from what I remember. Luke, have you dabbled in the Super Rush?
No, when I play golf games, I tend to go for the more realistic ones because the mechanics are more predictable. Whereas the mechanics in Mario golf games tend to be a little weird with clouds of wind on the terrain and sandstorms and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it didn't come out of the gate crash hot because people had issues with the story mode. There was like one sort of section where it was just absolutely punishing in the difficulty spike out of nowhere. It became impossible. But people enjoyed Speed Rush and I want to say Battle Golf, but it's not called Battle Golf. It's the one. It's basically like Capture the Flag, or Conquest of Battlefield,
right?
But, with golf.
Yeah.
So people really enjoyed that, and then obviously this is the second update. They've had another one, so it has been getting more attention, and Camelot have fixed some of the control issues that people had as well.
Okay, great.
With one of the updates. So yeah, I mean, this isn't going to make me want to play the game because it just never appealed to me in the first place. But I'm always happy to see games expand more to deliver more content to players. So I'm happy for that. Happy for the people that love it. But yeah, it's just not for me.
Yeah, I think also just great to have another Nintendo release in the middle of the year, right? Just padding out what typically I say typically, there might be like a summer drought, but the truth is we haven't experienced a summer drought in gaming for God knows how long. So anyway,
I mean, Nintendo had 3 games out in June alone.
Yeah, right. So yeah, there are plenty to come, plenty to play on the Switch, it seems. On screen right now, a re-release of the Bandai Namco 3DS game Disney Magical World 2 Enchanted Edition. I mean, Game of the Year contender right here, don't you reckon, Luke?
What year are we talking about?
Not sure, but yeah, 3DS, it's a while ago, probably a decade at this point. It was revealed and will release this holiday. Speaking of re-releases, not only is the Texas-based developer Aspyr working on a brand new remake of Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic for PS5 and PC, it's also porting the fan favorite 2003 sci-fi RPG to Nintendo Switch this November 11. I swear this was already announced like a while ago. No? Because there was a re-release for PS4, right? There was some kind of port. Was it not? Or I'm thinking of a different Star Wars game.
No. I think because it came to iPhone, so they had it on iPad for such a long time.
Yeah.
And then it hit iPhone for a while back.
Yep.
When they announced this news, like in the chats that I was in with the Vooks team and everything, I was over the moon. This is the one I've been wanting.
Yeah.
Republic Commando on Switch, that's fine. Jedi Knight, Academy, whatever, they're fine. Racer, cool, love that game. That's fine. KOTOR was the one I wanted. Aspyr, because they're the ones that also did the iPad port. They did the Mac version as well years ago. They've had their finger in this pie for like a decade now, so they know the game pretty well.
Or they're veteran Bioware talent, right, over at Aspyr. Yeah.
And they're also in Texas, not too far from Bioware Austin, which is the makers of the Old Republic, the MMO. They're not crossing over, folks. Don't read into that. But they're just down the road, so to speak.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm super happy for this one. I have most of the limited run collector's editions of the Star Wars games to Switch on my shelf. Because I love Star Wars. It is a big part of my life. So when I saw this, I was just like, this was the game that I was just like, oh, yes. So I'm all on board for this. And the fact that it's KOTOR on Switch means I can take it on the go and not have to worry about touchscreen controls.
Yeah, I started playing the backwards compatible version on Xbox because I never played it originally, way back in 2003. Though I remember seeing the box art like at EB Games and at Civic Video, where I used to go hire my games quite often. I just never made the jump. I don't know why. I liked Star Wars back when I was younger. Anyway, but no, I am very excited for the remake as well. That's coming, probably not for a few more years, but Aspyr also working on that one, which is exciting. We'll move over now. We have some news by way of Techland. Fresh off a 2-month delay, Techland was keen to remind us about its upcoming Zombies sequel, announcing that Dying Light 2 Stay Human Cloud version will be available on Nintendo Switch the same day as its non-cloud version release, which is February 4th, 2022. A free demo will also be available the same day. For those who haven't played the first and can't wait for the sequel, Dying Light Platinum Edition, a Switch port of the 2015 original, will be available this October 19. I remember the first game landed in that late January, early February window way back in 2015. Like, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember there being nothing else in that window, and it really just dominated the conversation. It kind of captured the community's zeitgeist at the time, and it was good enough, I will say. I don't think people were calling it amazing, but it was like to a level of quality that was high enough that it got people really excited. Like, you know what? There's nothing else to play. Let's dive into Dying Light. But yeah, would you say you're excited for the sequel? And what do you think of this cloud version? I think this is something that's been done with a couple of other Switch versions of games, right? Games that just don't quite run properly natively on the handheld.
So Dying Light Platinum Edition was announced during their Gamescom stream that Techland did. So this isn't news, but it's the first time, unless you're a Dying Light fan and you watched their Dying to Know streams.
Right.
There's a Dying 2, the number 2.
Oh, very smart.
Clever team there. But unless you watched that, it didn't really break through the news of Gamescom. So, it's good that this news is now out there, that more people are aware that the first game is coming.
Yeah.
And it is all packed on the one cart with all the DLC and a whole bunch of other stuff in a physical release. I'm all for that. I gave the first game a good go back when it first released, but I didn't maybe break 10 hours on it. To me, it was just like Mirror's Edge, but with more to do. And I liked Mirror's Edge a lot, so that's why I gave it a go.
Yeah.
As for the two with the cloud, this isn't the first game. Obviously, you mentioned there's been others. Guardians of the Galaxy is one that's getting a cloud release on Switch. We just had Plague Tale Innocence, which is just done as well. Obviously, those two aren't here. This is unlikely to come here, but spinning off from this, today, The Forgotten City was announced for Switch via cloud.
Oh, really?
Which was made in Melbourne.
Yeah, Australian team, yeah.
But the reason why this is important is because it is actually here via cloud. So all the others, Plague Tale, Resident Evil, Assassin's Creed, all the other ones that have come out. So Hitman is the other one I was thinking of. They were all, and Control. They were all cloud-based, but they weren't in the Australian eShop because there was no hardware here to support them.
Ah, right.
So
okay.
if you tried them in the trials, your connection speed determined how fast you were going to get things. I managed to get like the first few minutes in Control, and then the demo just went, "Your internet sucks. You can't play this."
Oh, because you're running it from a data center in the States or something, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So there was always that restriction. But the Forgotten City launching here, when we saw this, we were just like, "Oh yeah, fine. It's another cloud game. We don't have it." But no, he's actually here, and you can down. I have it on my Switch now already.
Oh, nice.
And some of the guys that I know have tried it have said it's played smoothly.
Oh, good. Yeah, that was going to be my question. So yeah, oh, that's awesome. I wonder where the data center is.
Well, that's the thing. We don't know because Ubisoft, who do this stuff, they don't put out press releases. It's all on the developer.
Yeah.
But the reason why it's kind of funny is because the company that's done this, Ubisoft, they've not done any of the big ones, but this sort of indie-ish title has sort of just slipped in.
Yeah.
And it's just out of nowhere just hit Switch via cloud. So that means that maybe we will see Dying Light 2 come to Switch via cloud in Australia.
Could be an interesting test case, yeah. If Nintendo look at it and see, hey, this game's done really well via the cloud, the response from the local audience is strong, there's demand for it, then yeah, maybe these third-party games can actually just invest a bit more, right? Just a couple of data centers locally down here in Australia. A few more.
Well, that's the thing. If we already have the data centers, it's fine. We just spin it up. But that's the thing. We don't know. And trying to get answers at the moment is a bit hard because of the time zone. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in that one.
Nice. Moving on now, we had another game coming from the same developers as Octopath Traveler. Let me just bring the video up so everyone can take a look at this little beauty, I might say. The same studio that brought us the delightful Octopath Traveler revealed more of its next turn-based RPG, Triangle Strategy. Despite having one of the worst names in video game history, the game is quite gorgeous, sporting, quote, stunning HD 2D visuals, unquote. That's from the actual trailer and the website. And releases on the March the 4th, in 2022. Triangle Strategy. Luke, did names get much worse? I mean, it just I'm not doing this game any service being named that.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's Square Enix, and if you need a horribly worded name, that's the company you go to.
That's the company you go to. Yeah.
They did the same thing.
So
Octopath
true.
Traveler it makes sense if you play the game.
Yeah.
It's context. But if you're looking at it on the shelf, you're going to buy a game for a friend as a gift. You see Octopath Traveler, that doesn't tell you what the game's about.
Yeah. What was that Kingdom Hearts spin-off as well? That was like 384
distance
divided by 2 or something.
Yeah, maths. Everyone loves math in their video game titles.
Yeah, exactly.
But the reason why this one's funny is it's the same team that did Octopath Traveler, which when that was announced as Project Octopath Traveler. And they dropped the project off it just to give it the full name. And when this was announced in February, they said it's called Project Triangle Strategy.
Yeah.
Here's the demo, go play it. And everyone went, well, why can't you just give us the name? And they made the joke, they're just going to drop Project and call it Triangle Strategy. And they did.
That's exactly how it's played out.
So,
anyway.
Yeah. But the game, if you've ever played the Final Fantasy Tactics games, this is basically that. It's just with, that fancy and amazing pixel art visual style over it.
Yeah. It is very, very beautiful. Speaking of beautiful games, the one playing on screen right now is Metroid Dread, the long-awaited direct sequel to 2002's Metroid Fusion. It received a new gameplay trailer reminding us that the game, developed by Spanish studio Mercury Steam, is launching in exactly 2 weeks' time on October the 8th. When the game releases next month, it'll be the latest installment in the beloved Nintendo series that hasn't seen a new entry not named Federation Force since Metroid Other M launched on the Wii in 2010. Metroid fans rejoice. Luke, over on Maxi-Geek Twitch channel, you've been streaming a lot of, was it Metroid Prime 3 Corruption? Did I get that name right?
Yeah, that's what I'm on at the moment, yep.
Yep, so big Metroid fan. How pumped are you for this one? 2D Metroid.
I'm very pumped to the point where I put my fingers in my ears and went, la, 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 la. I didn't watch the last trailer Nintendo put out because the trailer before then, they spoiled quite a few things. A couple of, returning bosses and characters and everything.
Avert your eyes from the stream right now then.
Yeah, no, I've hidden that away.
Okay, good.
Yeah, unfortunately, Nintendo and a few other companies love to do that. They love to spoil things ahead of time as part of their marketing. I'm all on board for Dread. I didn't need to see any more of it. A brief little snippet that it was coming was all I really sort of needed. I get why there's more of it because this is not the Direct is not for me. It's not for the hardcore Metroid fan. It's for the Nintendo fan who may not realize there's a big game coming in a couple of weeks. So I couldn't tell you what's actually in this trailer because I've not seen it. I'm not going to watch it. But I will say they do have a whole bunch of reports. They call it the Dread Report. They've done 8 so far, and there's a 9th one to come early next week, I think it is. That sort of go into a lot of the history of the series. So the actual story and the characters and the locations and everything. Because this is the 5th mainline entry. So there's NES Metroid, Game Boy Metroid, Metroid on Super Nintendo, then Metroid Fusion on the Game Boy Advance, and now this one. It's the 5th mainline entry. So it's actually completing off this whole story that we didn't know was starting back in the mid 80s.
Yeah, crazy that after it's 2002's Metroid Fusion that this is coming back and completing that storyline. You mentioned the Dread Report. They actually mentioned that at the end of the trailer. Metroid.nintendo.com I think is where they directed people to. So if you need more Metroid before it drops on the 8th of October. Go check it out there. We'll move on over now to the next story, which is pretty exciting, and that is Nintendo Switch Online. Nintendo's online membership offering is receiving additional plans, bringing some exciting old-school content to the service. Games from Nintendo 64 and the Sega Genesis will be available, with more titles added to the catalog in the future, including, surprisingly, the rare and now Xbox-owned fan favorite Banjo-Kazooie. While we don't yet have pricing details, the new expansion pack, as it's been called, will be available in late October. Additionally, wireless versions of the classic Nintendo 64 and Sega Genesis controllers are releasing this year and will be made available to Nintendo Switch Online subscribers for $50. We don't yet have local pricing for this one. Your thoughts on this, Luke? I'll just quickly jump in and say that, after Xbox heralded in Game Pass and that catalog is filled to the brim with a lot of back compat legacy titles that really do a great job of showcasing Xbox's past. I've been saying that Nintendo really need to just put the pedal to the metal on taking advantage of their entire back catalog and create a subscription service that delivers all of these retro games from their 30 plus year history at this point, that Nintendo fans are dying to play and would pay good money to have access to through a subscription service. Now we've got quite a few older titles on Nintendo Switch Online as well, but yeah, keen to hear your thoughts on 64 games and Sega Genesis games being added to this service.
Yeah, I mean, I'll clarify that point there. It's the Mega Drive here in Australia.
Oh, right, of course, yes.
Genesis was the US name. So just in case anyone's like, what the hell is he talking about? There's no Genesis here.
I was not a Sega
Genesis
boy,
we got in Australia was the band with Phil Collins. So, obviously there was a lot of talk, a lot of rumors about the Game Boy being added to Switch Online for many, many months. And it's funny, Angelo, who hosts the Vookcast, he did the deep dive into how that all came about. It was just an offhanded comment in somebody else's podcast where they're like, I think they should do this. And then somebody took that as they were doing it, and it became this massive cycle, self-perpetuating cycle of, but I saw it on this other site, so it must be true. I'm all for more games coming to the service. I'll be honest, I've been very critical of Nintendo of this offering, because it seems like every time they deem to release 3 or 4 games every 3 months, they sort of scrape the sides of the barrel for games, rather than they're not we don't have all the Mario games, we don't have all the main Nintendo games on all the platforms yet from Game Boy, from NES and SNES, but we've got Twin B and wrestling games and things like that, which I don't play those games. That didn't appeal to me as a kid, but for somebody else, that may have been the game they got at Christmas and played for 6 months until they got a game for their birthday. So, that may be the game that person loves the most, and I'm all for that. But I think they just they started spinning their wheels a bit and just not really sort of releasing anything. So I'm happy that they're doing more. Honestly, everyone expected Game Boy, but 64 was always floating around as, maybe they're going to do 64 next.
Yeah.
But adding Mega Drive is the big shocker, because Sega put out a plastic Mega Drive with all these games on it.
Yeah.
In the shops for like $100, and now you can get them on your Switch with all the others. So that shocked me. Yeah. Seeing 64, I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
To go back to the 90s and tell kids back then that in 2021 that you'll be able to play Sega games just not even with cartridges, digitally stored on your handheld Switch device, there'll be a 7-inch screen, is absolutely just bonkers.
We already had that with the Wii. They had the Sega games on there, like the TurboGrafx was on there. So there's a whole bunch of stuff, and they even had some arcade games there. So this is not new that we've had Sega games on like a virtual console style service, but the controller is Sega Mega Drive printed on it, but in the box shipped by Nintendo. That if you think it like that, you're like, oh my god, Nintendo are making a Sega controller. That should blow your mind if you're a kid of the 90s. So and obviously the day one lineup when they launch in October is incredible as well.
Yeah, no, it's all after you.
I was gonna say, I don't think you've got them in the list there, but we've got a massive, not massive thing, but we've got like some of the big hitters on the 64 day one.
Yeah, definitely. There's Ocarina and Mario Kart 64. Yeah, some big titles.
Yeah, but the big thing is Mario Kart 64, Star Fox 64, Lilac Wars, depending on which part of the world you're in.
Yeah.
And any other game that has multiplayer, they all support online multiplayer.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Instead of having 4 people around a TV for Mario Kart 64, it's 4 people anywhere in the world.
That's the last thing I would have expected Nintendo to be able to implement, I'll say, because they just seemingly don't have the greatest handle on online multiplayer. So to see it actually be implemented for some Nintendo 64 games from 20, 25 years ago, is pretty amazing. Yeah, that's really great.
I will be honest. Again, I'm showing my age here, but I remember, oh Jesus, playing Mario Kart, on like a 32 centimeter CRT TV with three other mates, and we've all got these teeny tiny little screens, and we're all like playing. Whoa, this is the best game ever. Same with GoldenEye and Perfect
You and
Dark.
me both, yep.
And now to be able to play that game with friends online, we're all in different states.
Yeah.
And we're all on, massive 50-inch TVs. That's just, my brain won't be able to process that.
Yeah, little Luke's like, what? What's going on?
Pretty much.
Yeah,
I was going to say,
go for it.
Controllers. Something that Nintendo didn't showcase in the Direct is that both the controllers have share buttons on them. The NES controllers that they released and the Super Nintendo controllers they released already don't have the share buttons. So you can't take snapshots of your games. But the 64 and Mega Drive controllers do. So it's in one of the PR photos that I got. They've got a slightly tilted version of it, and you can see the two buttons up top.
Yeah,
and
nice.
ZR, the teeny tiny little ZR button on the top right corner of the back of the controller near the share and home buttons, because the trigger will be ZL. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what do you make of Banjo? Obviously, developed by Rare, originally released exclusively on the 64 way back when. Now owned by Xbox. Not the biggest surprise, considering that, we've seen Xbox and Nintendo cooperate not too recently, or not too long ago, I should say, by implementing Banjo and adding him as a fighter into Super Smash Bros. So the idea that, a game now owned by Xbox is being released digitally as part of this subscription service isn't all that surprising. But yeah, your thoughts on that, and your thoughts on, do we see more games developed by Rare that contain IP and characters now owned by Xbox coming into this service and being added later, potentially? I'm thinking of Perfect Dark, Jet Force Gemini, Diddy Kong Racing. Obviously, Diddy Kong, a Nintendo-owned name and character, but that game features Banjo and Conker, which are now owned by Microsoft. Killer Instinct, perhaps. Yeah, what are your thoughts on this one?
I mean, I'm happy that it's there. It honestly wouldn't have felt like a 64 sort of offering without Banjo. So if they ever do like a 64 mini, which I don't think they will, but if they ever did that and it didn't have Banjo, it would just feel incomplete.
Oh, there'd be so many Rare games, right? That just if they weren't there, it wouldn't feel complete. Definitely.
So I'm all for that, and I honestly think it's just a matter of Xbox going, it's not going to cost us anything to do this. It gives them goodwill, because everyone goes, oh my god, Microsoft said yes to this. Oh my god, they're amazing.
Yeah.
So it doesn't cost them anything to do it. They get free goodwill from it. So it's a no-brainer for them. The only sort of question that I have is this going to be the original N64 release? With all the issues that had, or is it going to be sort of the updated one that hit Xbox Live Arcade? Not the enhanced visuals and that, but they made a few sort of changes.
It was
in that version.
Yeah, it was like twin stick, like camera controls on the right stick, and it was also I think 16:9 for the first time.
Yeah, one of the other things too is that all the notes that you collect, they don't reset when you leave the levels, whereas they do on the original release.
Yeah.
So just like minor gameplay things like that. So it's like, are we going to get those? Or are we just getting the same game that you can get on the cartridge still? Like,
yeah, it's a great point, because obviously there was work put into that Xbox Live Arcade port way back when, and that's the version that now lives as part of Rare Replay and is backwards compatible. So, whether that can be ported natively to the Switch as part of this, I'm not sure. You'd think that'd probably be easier than actually getting the Nintendo 64 version running, right?
Well, that's what I'm thinking. It's more a matter of, are they doing work to make it a better version, or are they just porting the thing? Because obviously we're not going to get the 16:9 version, with the better graphics, or the smoother graphics. We're not going to get that, but are we going to get just a more polished version of Banjo from the 64?
Yeah.
That's sort of the only thing I'd be questioning. But yeah, I'm all for it. And maybe we'll start seeing other companies. Maybe we'll see some of the old Acclaim games come back, like the Turoks, stuff like that. That could be amazing.
Yeah, sometimes the rights of those and who they live with now, like the publishers, the developers aren't around. It's really, really difficult. I think Phil Spencer was talking about a particular game from the original Xbox that was just like, it's like GoldenEye, right? Just how does that? It's like developed by Rare, which is once independent, but now owned by Xbox, but it was exclusively on Nintendo platform, and the license was with Activision, but now it's not anymore. Like, yeah, like figuring out the rights to that is really, really challenging. So, but yeah, here's hoping more games come in that sense.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about like Turok especially is that Nighthawk Interactive have the rights to that now.
Okay.
Which is why they've done the remasters of them on PC and Switch and that.
So there's got to be ambition to make a new game then, if they've gone to all that trouble, for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Anyway, moving on now, a couple of more announcements from the latest Nintendo Direct. A bunch of collections, actually. Shadowrun Trilogy by Paradox Interactive coming to the Switch in 2022. I know they've been doing great work on that series on the PC side of things, so good to see it coming to more platforms. Castlevania Advanced Collection brings, I've said Advanced twice there, it's just throwing me off, brings together 4 classic games to Switch, and it's available right now. And ActRaiser Renaissance, a re-release of the 1990s Super Nintendo classic, is also available today. There's a name that I only know just from mentions of people who've played it way back when. I have no familiarity with this IP, but I do know it's a pretty big deal amongst gamers who were enjoying it way back when.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, like Shadowrun, the only memory I have of Shadowrun is that weird Xbox 360
shooter
game. There was
developed
on PC shooter on console.
Yeah.
So I don't have a connection to Shadowrun outside of that. So I'm keen to see what that is. Obviously that's next year, so that's out of sight, out of mind for now. The Game Boy Advance games of Castlevania. One of the guys I know that when this was rated here in Australia first a few months back, he was ecstatic. He loves these games. I'm not a Castlevania fan, which is kind of funny because I love Metroid, and they're basically the same thing.
Right,
but
yeah.
with,
well, that's it, right?
One's space bounty hunter, one's vampire hunter.
Yeah, that's where Metroidvania, how that term was born.
Yeah, but I've just never clicked with Castlevania. So gameplay-wise, for me, I'm not interested. But I am all for digital preservation of titles.
Of course, yeah.
So having these 4 games release in the collection is great, but the fact that you can get the European, the Japanese, and the North American versions of all 4 of them, so there's technically 12 games on there. They just duplicate them a few times. But I'm all for music and save states, rewind, but the art gallery, all that sort of stuff. That's what I love.
Yeah.
Because it's preserving. It's not just that somebody made a game. It's somebody had to draw thousands of pieces of art to define the vision of what that game is, right?
Yeah.
Somebody had to write maybe 24 music tracks for a stage, and they got 1 selected, So I'm all for the preservation and celebration of the art. So that's what I love in these collections. Side tangent, the Disney one was sort of officially confirmed this morning, with adding in the extra Aladdin and adding in the Jungle Book games to it. And there's more now art, more concept sketches and all that sort of stuff being included. And that's just more preservation stuff. So anytime I see a collection like this, I may not like the games in the collection, but I'm happy when a game goes, hey, here's all this stuff that helped make these games that you love. Enjoy that as well. That's what I'm in for these things.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, I have no affiliation with something like ActRaiser, but I'm really happy for those few people out there who tuned into the stream not expecting it, and then they just wet their pants with excitement to know that it's coming back in some meaningful way, which is great. Anyway, we get into the tail end of the Direct now. Some pretty massive announcements, and one I'm very keen to get your thoughts on with this one, Luke. That is, legendary game designer Shigeru Miyamoto appeared on screen to announce that a Super Mario feature film from Nintendo and Illumination, the American film studio that brought us Despicable Me, amongst many other animated modern films, will launch in the holiday window of 2022, and it will star... Is everyone sitting? Get ready. Chris Pratt as Mario, Anya Taylor-Joy as Peach, Charlie Day as Luigi, Keegan-Michael Key as Toad, Jack Black as Bowser, Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong, and the voice of Mario himself, Charles Martinet, will have several cameo roles. What the fuck? Luke, basically, like, what is this film?
So even before the cast was announced, they confirmed the writer, and they confirmed the directors.
Okay, I don't have these details. Tell us.
So the writer, I can't think of his name, but he wrote Lego Movie, second one.
Okay.
So he wrote that, and that was a good movie. And the directors, Aaron, can't think of his surname, Aaron and Michael, they did the Teen Titan Go series and Teen Titans Go to the Movies.
Okay.
So they're sort of known for their quick animation style. So we sort of knew, the type of humor we're going to get from the writer, and the style we're sort of going to see from the directors. But yeah, this cast, like, if you had said, anyone in the world that you can have voice Mario, not Charles Martinet, who do you pick? Everyone would have gone, okay, well, we could go with Danny DeVito. We could go with somebody who's got a bit of a gruffer voice, right? Go against the grain of, instead of the wahoo, we get the wahoo, right? We could have gone that way, right? Everyone would have done it. Everyone would have picked, the most obscure, gruff, tough guy. Nobody would have picked Chris Pratt. And no offense to Chris Pratt, I think he's a great actor. And
I like him.
Funny as heck. But he would never have entered my mind as the voice of Mario.
Yeah.
Ever. Jack Black as Bowser, though, I see it, and at the same time, I worry about it.
Okay.
Because he's known, he can be, very somber. He can be very powerful, and he can also be a little, unstable with. If you see any of his Tenacious D songs, he'll be all very mellow, and then he's screaming and rah rah rah. But he's also being the voice of Claptrap in the Borderlands movie. So he's doing
Motive Light in Psychonauts recently as well, and obviously Brutal Legend.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking more video game movies. He's got two next year with Borderlands and Mario. So, I mean, you didn't have it in the list, but Fred Armisen. If anyone's ever seen Parks and Recreation, he's the straight to jail guy. Do this, straight to jail. Do that, no jail. He's that guy.
Yeah.
As Cranky Kong, like that's an insane one. I don't know. I can't think of his name. He's a comedian. They've got him doing Spike. I honestly can't picture Spike as a character unless they're talking about like Charge and Chuck or one of those guys. I just can't picture the character of Spike. And obviously seeing Kamek in there, voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson. So Charles Martinet and Kevin Michael Richardson are the only actual voice actors in this movie, and it's sort of bizarre that they're sort of in the middle of all this Hollywood talent.
Yeah.
Kevin Michael Richardson is best known for the voice of Cleveland Jr. from the Cleveland Show, and a whole bunch of other things. He's Captain Gantu in Lilo and Stitch. He's Shredder in the 2002 series of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He's done Joker. He's easily everywhere. But yeah, so I'm ecstatic for him, and obviously Charles Martinet, obviously actually the voice of Mario. He's also the voice of Wario. So maybe we'll see a Wario
bunch
cameo.
of Nintendo characters. Yeah.
Yeah. And then everyone thinks he's just the Mario guy, but he also did Parthenax in Skyrim. He's the big dragon on the top of the mountain that teaches you the words.
So versatile.
Yeah, so he also does a rap as a vampire. Somebody shared that in the Vox Discord earlier today to bring that back into my mind that I had forgotten about it. And it's not a vampire rap like I'm a vampire. It's no, I write software that helps you prioritize and be efficient in business. So it's a really bizarre thing, and he's dressed as a vampire. It's funny. But yeah, the whole cast, I've seen a few reactions, and it's always the same thing. They do Chris Pratt, and they're like, "Oh my god, what the hell?" And Anya Taylor-Joy's like, "Oh, okay." And, it's like Charlie Day. "Oh my god, he's Luigi. I love it." Jack Black. "Oh my," and it just cascades into absolute chaos from that point. So I think everyone's pretty much on the same wavelength, where it's just like, I don't know what the hell they're doing, but I can't wait to see what they end up doing.
Yeah, I think were it not for the Sonic film recently, like I'd be 100% sure that this is going to be a disaster. But now I'm only 90% sure this is going to be a disaster. Like there's a small glimmer of hope that this might be good. Like you mentioned, writing, directing talent from, was it Teen Titans and the Lego movies. So look, it seems like they're tapping the right people, or talent that makes the most sense to at least first approach when putting together a feature film based on video games. So we're just going to wait and see. I will will, of course, reserve judgment. I'm thinking also of the fact that the very negative reaction to Heath Ledger being cast as the Joker, for instance, or even Will Smith being cast as the genie in Aladdin, and he did a pretty damn good job there. So yeah. Holiday 2022 Super Mario feature film. Keen to see what Illumination can pull off. They're not my favorite animation studio, but they're up against tough competition with things like people like Pixar and Walt Disney Studios in that space as well. Anyway, we'll move on now down the list. Just a couple of other announcements out of the Nintendo Direct. Next up was Splatoon 3, the sequel to Nintendo's Splat-tacular family-friendly shooter, received a new trailer, but no narrower release window than 2022. As of June this year, 2017, Splatoon 2 had sold over 12 million copies worldwide, selling twice as much as its predecessor and making it one of the best-selling Switch games. I think a game that I might have played at like EB Expo 2014 or something, Luke. I recognize Splatoon as just like a really quirky title that seems to be nailed on execution, on every release. But yeah, yourself, Splatoon, excited for this one? Have you played the others?
I'm all for Splatoon single player because I love the mechanics, the swimming in the ink to recharge yourself, stuff like that. But I'm not a multiplayer gamer. I very rarely play multiplayer games. And honestly, that just comes down to time because so many games require you to spend hours in it to level up, to get better gear, to have a chance at surviving. So I'm all for the single player. That being said, I love the visual design of Splatoon, of the series. I think it's it's not unique because they're not doing anything that hasn't been done before. But when you combine the visual look with the audio and sort of the vibe that the whole series is giving off, I think it's done really well. And obviously we've had 2 already, and as you said, like Splatoon 2 sold a couple of million copies. The whole series, it's just been executed so well. They don't release it a game and have to patch it continuously like so many other shooters. They sort of hit the ground and they go, because it's not a pixel perfect shooter. So because it's not about killing the enemy, it's about covering the ground with ink. So I think that gives them that leeway. But yeah. And every time I see it, I just think of Nickelodeon with their slime, and it just makes me laugh. That it's basically just Nickelodeon Call of Duty, so to speak. So I'm okay with it, but yeah, I'm all for the single player because some of those levels get really crazy. There's one in Splatoon 2 where you're actually circling a GameCube, trying to defeat an enemy that lives on the GameCube surface. So
yeah, nice. Yeah, I mean, like I said, 12 million copies worldwide for Splatoon 2. This game needs no more praise heaped on it or more attention drawn to it. But yeah, I'll echo what you said. Like, Nintendo cops a lot of criticism for not delivering new IP nearly as often as people would like. But when they do it, more often than not, they usually hit it out of the park. I think you might view ARMS as a bit of a failure on that part. Like, it just didn't reach the critical mass that I assumed they would have liked for it to. That said, it was a launch title. I can only guess that it sold really well in that launch window as well. But yeah, Splatoon 3, we're on to the third game, and there's a diehard community. I see tournaments for it, like casual esports tournaments as well. So yeah, really excited to see where this one goes.
I mean, they also kept it going with the Splatfest, pick a side. Ketchup versus mustard, or they had a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles one for a while. It was Leo versus Donatello, Raphael versus Michelangelo, stuff like that. And just ARMS at the last number that Nintendo gave sold over 2 million copies. So not a smash hit by Nintendo standards, but 2 million copies of any game is still good numbers. So
this is true. Anyway, moving on to the last story of the Direct, Nintendo ended their live stream with the first gameplay trailer for Bayonetta 3, the Nintendo Switch exclusive sequel in Sega's beloved action franchise. Originally revealed way back at the 2017 Game Awards, Bayonetta 3 is being developed by Platinum Games and is now slated to release still just sometime in 2022. So yeah, first time we're seeing Bayonetta gameplay. Luke, I think I played. What was the first one? The first one was on 360, right? That was way back in that time. I've never been a huge fan of just pure action games other than Ninja Gaiden. Like, I never got into Devil May Cry, and so the idea of Bayonetta just never really appealed to me. And combine that with the weirdness of this extravagant female character who fights with her hair, it really wasn't appealing to me in any kind of way. So your thoughts on the third game in the franchise finally on its way, it seems.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Bayonetta's not my go-to series, but I've played through the first two of them, and I found them to be fun games. They get a little chaotic at points where it's just so much happening on screen with all the effects. You're like, I really don't understand what I'm seeing. But yeah, I'm all for it. I honestly think Nintendo should have either not announced Bayonetta 3 so early or shown the game off earlier.
Yeah.
Because it's like 3 years, 9 months, right? That's probably the longest time between a game being confirmed as in development and then actually shown to the public. So
we'll see if Metroid Prime 4 can break that record, right?
Yeah. Actually, they're probably pretty close because that was
2018 or 17 as well. That was a direct as well.
It was an E3 thing.
There you go. That might be pushing 4 years.
Yeah. In any event, I'm all for more Bayonetta. I have seen people complain about the fact that she doesn't use her hair summon a monster in the gameplay reveal today, and it's like, you know what? Nobody cares. She's still summoning the monster. Just because she doesn't have to get half naked to do so, doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It's like if Chief didn't have to reload his gun by taking off his helmet and spinning around like a Sailor Moon, nobody would care. Right? If that was in the game, that was his thing, nobody would care that he's not doing it.
Though please let that be Infinite DLC. I would love that. I'd pay for that.
If he took his helmet off, that would be insane on its own. But yeah, I'm all for it, and I think Platinum have been given the time to make the game they really wanted to, because apart from one or two moments where it sort of chugged in the footage, it looks and runs pretty smoothly the whole way through. Like, it looks great, runs smooth. I will say though that the two fake outs that they put up there, one was with the dog with Lappy, who's from Astral Chain.
Right. Yeah.
Lappy's the police mascot from that series. When they did that, I'm like, hang on, because nothing before then was exclusively Bayonetta. Like, when you see the trailer start, you see Platinum up in the top right corner.
Yeah, just military guys on the street, right? Yeah.
So the opening shot's the camera panning down. You see the word Platinum in the corner. You're like, okay, it's Platinum Games. But then on the building at the back up top, you see W101. You're like, okay, it's definitely Platinum Games, right? You know. But yeah, up until Lappy and the sword swings around, you see the reflection. Nothing says this is Bayonetta. So everyone was like, oh, yes, this is Bayonetta. And then you see Lappy like, is it Bayonetta? I'm confused now. So that, I hate them for that, because I was like, oh, maybe it's Astral Chain 2, which would have been really bad if they had announced a sequel to that before we got Bayonetta 3.
That also happened at the in the Spider-Man 2 trailer, right? Like, it's just a city shot, and then electricity hits a lamppost, and with all these Infamous rumors rolling about, you're like, oh, Infamous! And then all of a sudden, it's the Spider-Man chest piece that appears on screen. You're like, not Infamous.
But then they did it with at the end where they had the 2022 text on the screen, and then they cut it in half, and it's like, well, hang on, is it not 2022?
Well, you're just destroying the date here. Like, you're saying it's earlier, or
is it coming out sooner? Is it being pushed a year? Like, what's going? And then they confirmed afterwards that it is 2022, but it's like, bit of mixed messaging
bizarre.
On that one.
Yeah, truly bizarre.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Bayonetta 3 launching next year. 2022 shaping up really well for Nintendo. Some big hitters, obviously Splatoon 3, Bayonetta 3. We've also got the new Mario Rabbids game from Ubisoft as well. Sparks of Hope, I think that one's called. That's in the early stages of the year. And then Breath of the Wild 2. I think that's got the release window of 2022 as well, right? So
for the moment, yeah.
Yeah, looking pretty good for Nintendo. Overall thoughts on this show? Luke, we haven't seen a full direct like this in a while. I'm not a huge Nintendo fan. Like I said, I don't have a Switch, but I think for the most part, I'd be coming away pretty pleased, pretty excited for all the stuff coming.
Yeah, I honestly thought it was one of their better directs. Obviously, they've only done 2 this year with E3 and February. But overall, the content that they showed off was just fantastic. It may not have had a game that everyone a game that everyone united on. But there were plenty of games across multiple genres that, as you said, we got a kart racer, we got some tactics games, we got, collections of games, we got, promises of updates to Animal Crossing and Smash Brothers. In all honesty, the only thing we didn't really see was Mario, like in his own standalone game.
Yeah.
Outside of Mario 64 or anything like that. But we sort of hit we got sort of one of everything. And then obviously the Mario movie stuff sort of just like blew everything else out of the water. It was like,
this is true, yeah.
How? So, yeah, I think it was a really solid direct. If I had to give it, like, people could do that grading, was it an A, was it a B? I'd give it like an A minus. I would have preferred, they sort of, towards the very end, they just sort of smashed through a bunch of games. And it didn't really make sense for some of them because they weren't even like little sections. They were like cut up pieces all mixed together. So, some flow things that were a bit weird, but other than that, I think it was a really solid direct.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'd probably go for around about the A minus as well. I think, just not that huge, massive, knock you off your chair sort of like, oh my god, I can't believe this is happening sort of thing. Some great news as part of the Nintendo Switch Online N64 and Sega Genesis stuff coming as well. I think that's going to really please a lot of people. Like I said, the 2022 lineup is looking strong. I don't think any Switch owner is wanting for content. A lot of things dropped today, and also October is jam-packed as well. And you can look forward to those live streams of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, the final character, and also Animal Crossing DLC dropping in November as well. So I think, Nintendo's mostly nailed it out of the park, save for their whole casting of the film. So, but that we'll just have to reserve judgment for.
The only thing that I'm a little worried about is we did not get any update on Advance Wars.
Okay,
which is coming out December 3rd. We got a whole bunch of stuff for 2022. We got a whole bunch of stuff leading up to November. But we didn't see anything on Advance Wars, which is a little weird.
Yeah, I suppose they didn't touch on a lot of their other big stuff as well, right? No mention of Pokemon. We've got the remakes end of this year. We've got
Pokemon.
Arceus
They tend to do their own directs on that. So because they had one of those 7 weeks ago. That was always going to do their own thing, and they sort of keep them separate now because Pokemon's big enough on its own.
It warrants it.
But they completely skipped over their December game or December games because Big Brain Academy is also coming back on Switch in December.
Yeah,
and there was nothing. Not that I expected that. It's not really a game, but that didn't. Nothing in December warranted a mention from Nintendo. So that's a little weird.
Yeah. But anyway, a solid showing overall from Nintendo. Very happy for Switch fans around the world. We're going to wrap up the show here. It's been a very long one. Usually we don't push it to 2 hours, but plenty of great stuff to talk about. Before we wrap it all up, though, Luke, I would love it if you could tell the folks where they can check out all your fantastic work, both on the website and as the podcast as well.
Yeah, so everything that I do is over at Maxi-Geek.com. It's MAXI-geek. So and there you find me on all the socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple News, Google News, all that sort of stuff. I'm also on the Vookcast every fortnight with some of the guys from Vooks.net. So if you're a very passionate Nintendo fan, we talk about everything Nintendo there. So I foresee that I will be revisiting this topic of Nintendo Direct on Sunday when we record the next episode.
Good rehearsal then.
So yeah. So that's where I'm at for video wise, but Vookcast, Maxi-Geek is where you can find me sort of every day, and I'm always online as well. So if you ever see news or you want to talk about games, just drop me a tweet or come visit the site or the Facebook page and post a comment, and I'm always up for a chat.
Nice. I've linked Maxi-Geek in the chat, and it'll be available in the YouTube description as well. So be sure to go check out all the great work that Luke and the team do over there. We're going to wrap the show up. This has been the Question Box. You can watch us live every Friday, 8:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, or Daylight Savings Time, as it will be very soon, right here on this Twitch channel, twitch.tv/magic_cast. If you missed the live show, though, you can check out all our VODs on my YouTube channel. Just search Magic Casts, all one word, on YouTube, and follow me on Twitter as well, at magic_cast. I'm going to have an Xbox theme show next week. The guys from the Xbox cast, both Lee and Kyle, will be joining me. We had Simone just a few weeks back, so it's the boys' turns to come on over and talk about all the great things happening on the Xbox side of things. Here's hoping we get some great news stories to discuss as well. I want to thank Luke again for joining me. Thank you for everyone who joined us in the chat and contributed as well. And until next time, take care.